Hello, comrades, and welcome to this first video on the Chinese Revolution, Area of Study 1. I will do my very best to record videos on various key knowledge points and topics that we cover as we explore the Chinese Revolution. But I can't make any promises that every single topic and every single key knowledge point will have its own video. But let's see how we go. Anyway, for this first video, we're going to be having a look at Sun Yixian and the 1911 Revolution. So here is a quote from Sun Yixian, who is a key individual that we're going to explore in this video. He said, "Only when imperialism is eliminated can there be peace for mankind. To achieve this goal, we should first rejuvenate Chinese nationalism and restore China's position as a sovereign state." So this here is Sun Yixian. And first, brief introduction to what his views were. So Sun Yixian had briefly lived in the USA. He'd lived all over the world, actually, Japan, USA, UK, and he'd seen the virtues of modern democratic government. He was angered by China's domination at the hands of foreign powers and by the corrupt Qing dynasty. And he formed his first revolutionary group, the Revived China Society, in 1894. For Sun, the imperial system was outdated and must be overthrown. Modernization was only possible if China adopted progressive Western-style political and economic institutions, so having like a parliament and judiciary system and executive branch of government, etc. He also believed that China could not progress unless it became a republic. So Sun developed his own revolutionary philosophy, which has since become known, which is known as the three principles of the people. So let's have a look at the three principles of the people. So this was his philosophy on what a Chinese republic would look like. The three principles are nationalism, democracy, and people's livelihood. So let's look closely at nationalism first. So he believed that domination by foreign powers must come to an end. China had been dominated by the British, the Japanese, and so he wanted to make China stronger. And so he wanted domination by foreign powers to come to an end, and the Manchu, or the Qing dynasty, ousted. He believed that Han Chinese should rule themselves. And this is all summed up in the anti-Qing slogan, "China is the China of the Chinese." So nationalism was the first principle of the people for Sun Yixian. The second was democracy. He called for a republic with a popularly elected president and parliament. He wanted judicial, legislative, and executive branches of government. And he believed that the best way to phase in democracy was to have 3 years of a military dictatorship. The reason he thought that a military dictatorship was needed was just to hold China together. Traditionally, when or in the past, when a dynasty came to an end, or when government changed in China, it led to fighting over control. So sort of like command by warlords and different states, warring states fighting against each other. So to avoid that, Sun believed that 3 years of having a military sort of strongman in power and a dictatorship to just hold China together and make sure that China remained strong was necessary. After that, those 3 years, he thought there needed to be a 6-year tutelage period to explain and trial different democratic processes. So basically phasing in democracy after those 3 years for the next 6 years. And then after the total 9 years, the military government would be disbanded, a constitution would be written, and elections held to bring about democracy. So democracy was the second principle of the people. The third principle of the people for Sun Yixian was people's livelihood. He wanted more regulated ownership of agricultural land. He wanted strong state ownership in industry, so some socialist aspects here. He wanted a fairer tax system, and he once described people's livelihood as socialism, it is communism, it is utopianism. So he believed, we can sum up his principles of the people as he wanted a strong China that was democratic and had aspects of socialism. The Tongmenghui. So in September 1905, Sun brought together a coalition of different revolutionary groups, including his own Revived China Society, and created the Revolutionary Alliance, otherwise known as Tongmenghui. Tongmenghui's newspaper, the People's Paper, was smuggled into China, where it was eagerly read, particularly by students. Quick hint: students are going to play a big role in in the Chinese Revolution. By 1906, the Tongmenghui had 10,000 members. So in just a few months, really, it had grown enormously and had 10,000 members. It staged 5 failed uprisings. So every time the Tongmenghui Sun's group staged an uprising, it failed without fail. And while the Tongmenghui did not play a direct role in bringing down the Manchu dynasty in 1911, which we'll talk about very shortly, their efforts in encouraging anti-Qing feeling was significant. Historian Edwin Moyes says the final collapse of the Qing dynasty was to a considerable extent inspired by a revolutionary named Sun Yat-sen. So even though the Tongmenghui and Sun Yixian or Sun Yat-sen were not necessarily present or didn't play an active role in the 1911 revolution, Sun Yixian's views and philosophies played an enormous role. Later years for Sun Yixian. So Sun's ideas were cited by the rebels that brought down the Qing as the inspiration for their actions. He served briefly as provisional president, but stepped down in favor of Yuan Shikai, which we will explain in more detail in the next video. He became Minister of Railways in Yuan's government. However, he was exiled after Yuan revealed that he was not committed to democratic principles, and Sun's political party, which became the Kuomintang or the GMD or the Nationalists, were increasingly repressed. Sun returned to China during the warlord period after Yuan Shikai's death in 1916. And the Kuomintang, the GMD, a few years later, accepted a united front alliance with the Chinese Communist Party, which we will discuss in a later video, in 1922. Plans were made for a military expedition to unite China under a Republican government through this united front of the GMD and the CCP. But Sun Yixian died from cancer before. Basically, at age 58, he died from cancer, and he hadn't set up a successor to take over the Kuomintang, so that left the Kuomintang in a bit of a state at that point. Now let's have a look very briefly at the Xinhai Revolution. So this is basically where the area of study begins. So the area of study technically begins in 1912, but the Xinhai Revolution is the sort of context that you need to understand it. So by 1911, political mismanagement, domestic rebellion, continued humiliation at the hands of foreign powers had all discredited the Qing dynasty. On 10th of October 1911, so double 10th, 1010, a bomb that was being assembled by army officers unintentionally exploded in Wuhan. So it was an accidental, unintentional cause of the revolution. There was a subsequent investigation by Qing authorities of this army barracks, which revealed unauthorized weapons and a list of conspirators, because the soldiers had, even though this was an unintentional explosion, these soldiers had been plotting an uprising. The soldiers brought their plans forward, realizing this is basically do or die now. And within 6 weeks, 15 of China's 24 provinces had declared their independence from Qing rule. Sun Yixian returned to China from, he was on a speaking tour of the US. And on 29th of December, a provisional government of the Republic of China was proclaimed at Nanjing. Sun became China's provisional president on the 1st of January, 1912. However, we mentioned briefly Yuan Shikai. He was quite significant during this time. So Sun Yixian became the provisional president, but he didn't stay the provisional president for long. The Qing still remained in power in Beijing, and Yuan was a general from northern China who had served under the previous Dowager Empress Cixi, and when Cixi died, you'll remember Cixi from the beginning of the last emperor. She was the previous empress before Puyi. Puyi's regent and Puyi's government didn't trust Yuan Shikai at all. In January 1909, he was fired from his post as general. However, in late 1911, he was recalled to head the military campaign against the revolution. He was appointed commander-in-chief, but Yuan also negotiated with the revolutionaries, so he was playing both sides. And basically, regardless of who won, he wanted to be the president of the new government. Sun Yixian agreed to stand down as president on the condition that Yuan secured the abdication of Puyi. Yuan Shikai managed to achieve this, and the Manchu regime passed on its mandate of heaven, and Puyi abdicated on the 12th of February 1912. On the 14th of February 1912, Sun Yixian agreed to pass on the presidency to Yuan Shikai, and General Yuan was sworn in as the new president of the Republic of China on 10th of March 1912. So that's essentially where our area of study begins. Is there has been a revolution, the Qing dynasty has come to an end. Sun Yixian was and his views, his 3 principles of the people, were a driving force for that initial revolution, and he became the provisional president. But General Yuan Shikai, after securing the abdication of Puyi, he became the president of the Republic of China on the 10th of March 1912. So in our next video, we'll have a look at the presidency of Yuan Shikai from 1912 to his death in 1916. I hope you found this useful, and I will see you next time.